Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. A little inside info for you guys here. Shane and I were just kind of ballparking the show, and I'm thinking maybe we should delay recording it until Thursday. Maybe U of A will get a commit. Nah, we don't have to worry about this. Oh, wait a second. We interviewed our guest a little bit earlier, and we'll introduce you to him, a new guest that we've never had on the show. And then Arizona finally gets a basketball commitment from Jaden Bradley. So we're going to talk about that, Shane. Just we'll start with buy or sell about that. But first, I want to just tease our guest, Rob Cassidy, basketball recruiting director, Rivals.com, going to make his Wildcat Country debut. Shane, some good news finally amongst a time of, well, not great news with some of the other programs.
Well, it's not so much bad news; it's just no news, and that's led to a lot of panic online and on the message boards and all that. But Rob Cassidy, who we're going to chat with, he was out in Phoenix this past weekend watching both of Tommy Lloyd's 2024 commits in action. So he's got a lot of info to share about them. And then we'll get his thoughts on should, like we asked Matt Moreno last week, should Wildcat fans be panicked? That's your weekly question now. Should Arizona is it panic time for Arizona basketball? Whether it's in season or not, is it panic time? And so we'll address that yet again. Well,
let's get right to it, because all you guys want to hear about is what Arizona just got. So let's start with buy or sell. It's presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, get one of those beauties or something with the University of Arizona logo. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, to get $5 off. Or get your Ice Shaker at fanatics.com. All right, Shane, Jaden Bradley it is. Point guard, was at Alabama last year. The numbers are nothing to write home about, but this is a former 4 or 5-star kid who's going to handle the ball for Arizona. And what it looks like is a 2 point guard lineup, like Tommy Lloyd used with Kirk Kriisa and Kylan Boswell.
Well, my first thought, and just to give people some background on Jaden Bradley, if you haven't looked him up already, he averaged a little over 6 points, 3 assists a game for Alabama last season. He got some decent minutes, although they dropped off Alabama's last 2 NCAA tournament games. He only got 13 combined minutes in those games, and that could just be a case of roster tightening, bench tightening. As you get further in the tournament, Alabama ran 9 or 10 deep, so maybe he got a little lost in the shuffle. But he had some good moments. He shot a little under 40% from the field. He was the number 32 overall recruit in the 2022 class, according to Rivals. He's number 54 overall, or 54 overall in the transfer portal, according to Rivals. So not as impressive an ad as Ryan Nembhard, not as earth shattering. But my first thought, Eric, was this guy's still a work in progress. But beyond that, while Ryan Nembhard I thought could have started right away alongside Kylan Boswell, even though they both would have been been point guards, maybe that's what Bradley does as well. But my thought is once this roster comes together, and it will, that maybe it's a situation where he backs up Kylan Boswell. I don't know if that's going to be the case.
I would be surprised. In my opinion, Shane, Jaden Bradley is not transferring to Arizona to sit on the bench and to be a 6-man off the bench. I think Tommy Lloyd promised him a starting job. So what I expect to see is these are the. You don't think so? I think what
a lot of it, Eric. A lot of it has to do with this these days too.
Yeah, but you're not paying big money.
And for those who are not watching, I just did the finger money thing with my
but you're not paying a guy, decent NIL money to sit on the bench. I mean, I would see Jaden Bradley as a 27 to 35 minute a game guy.
Well, maybe. He was only a freshman, Eric. So it's not like he's coming to Arizona for 1 year like Courtney Ramey and Cedric Henderson did. He's a guy who could presumably be here for 3 years. Maybe he leaves sooner than that if he has some success. But it's not just a 1 year play. So I think that was the argument, and I'm sure part of it is he thinks he has a better chance of cracking the lineup and moving up at Arizona than at Alabama, which is kind of crazy to think about, considering that Alabama is still considered a football school. But here we are. But let's see how the roster shakes out. There's still a long way to go. Tommy Lloyd could still add an impactful shooting guard who ends up starting. But I agree with you. I think he expects more playing time, and that's one of the reasons he committed. But I'm sure there are other factors in play as well.
Yeah. All right. So what I expect to see from this is another guard. I expect to see another wing player, and then there are going to be a couple of international players that have been mentioned on message boards and such, and we'll let those play out because I know nothing about those.
And we're still not 100% sure if Tubelis is done.
He's gone. I mean, they're assuming he's gone.
I'm just saying I understand. I'm just saying we're not 100%. That's not a completely done deal yet. I realize it's likely, but it's not a done deal yet.
All right. So number one, Shane, just real simple: buy or sell Jaden Bradley to Arizona. Do you like it, or do you underwhelmed by it?
I'll buy it. I think that it's hard to escape the conclusion this is Tommy Lloyd's second choice for an additional point guard after Ryan Nembhard fell through. But yeah, I like the upside, certainly. He had some good games in there. He had some good shooting games. He's still not a great shooter. He shot just under 40% from the field, 31% from three. So he had an okay freshman year. And again, as talented and loaded as Alabama was, I think he got a bit lost in the shuffle. But I think he's a guy who could develop under Tommy Lloyd. Tommy Lloyd's already got a reputation of being able to develop the big men, with Christian Coloco and then Umar Ballo. Let's see how he can do with the guards. So no, I'll buy it as a solid addition. It's not as earth shattering, but I think you also have to consider, Eric, that Arizona fans were just starved for something. And it's like, okay, we got a guy who got some minutes from the big name program. We'll take it. Like a month ago, Arizona fans might not have been as wowed, but now it's like, okay, Tommy Lloyd actually knows the transfer portal exists. Of course he does, and of course he's working it, but it just gives Arizona fans reassurance that he's working on it and there are possibly bigger things to come.
So, I mean, I'm pleased with what we saw here. I'm going to buy this one. Bradley, here's the thing. I like guys that are highly ranked guys. They're obviously highly ranked for a reason. IMG Academy guy. We talked to Rob off the air after we recorded the interview, which was just a few hours ago. And, we said, well, what's the deal with this guy? He says, yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch him much at Alabama, but, out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, he was a legit player. So guys with higher ceilings, I mean, that's encouraging. So I like to pick up. Yeah. I want to see what else he's going to do. But, ASU has 7 transfer commits at this point. Arizona finally got one, though. Well, we needed something. It's not just
a numbers game. I mean, Kevin Sumlin racked up how many 3-star football recruits, and and he'd have earlier in the recruiting process, he'd have 20 guys, and other guys would have 5 or 10. So what? It's about talent,
and they're all gone now. By the way,
I know. I'm just saying it's about quality more than quantity.
Right, but this is a guy who's a highly rated prospect out of high school. Only 1 year in college, has upside. And I love it. Arizona plays Alabama in December at
that's right. I completely forgot about that. That headline writes itself. Yep.
Yeah, I think we're all happy about that. And if you're listening, I'm sure you're probably like, all right, well, this is a good pickup, but what's next? And that's kind of how I feel. Like, great, we got this. We're on to something here. We're filling out the roster, but what's next? Where's the scoring going to come from next year?
Yeah,
that's the question. So that's what I want to know from Tommy Lloyd going forward. All right. So number 2, Shane, Tommy Lloyd made some comments at this EYBL camp last weekend to Bruce Pascoe. Our friend Bruce Pascoe has been on the show 7 times, the Arizona Daily Star. And he says, quote, I think we're in great shape. I mean, college basketball is different today than it was 3, 5, 10 years ago. So I feel we're in a good position. I love the pieces we've got. Maybe I've got some insight to some other pieces coming that others don't. So I'm sleeping good. Are you buying these comments, or is Tommy full of smoke here?
I'll buy them until there's a reason to sell them. And there's always stuff going on behind the scenes we don't know. Like, we're all panicking, like Tommy Lloyd's not doing anything in the portal. Well, of course he's working on it. And I still think he's being pickier than most coaches, but I think it's a combination of, yes, he's working on his international pipeline, and he's probably looking at some guys who are maybe testing the NBA waters right now and don't want to commit to transferring somewhere else that he's confident are going to come to Arizona eventually. So between those two, yeah, I think so. I'm not. By the way, I got to mention, I love how you have a great understanding of the numbers now. Bruce Casco's 7, Matt Moreno is like 16. So I
got a spreadsheet. I got a spreadsheet now.
I love the spreadsheet. I love you can spit out those numbers whenever.
We're going to always spit out these numbers. I'm going to keep this updated because it's fun. It's, we're Rob is our 96th guest, and we'll see who guest number 100 is. We got to make it. We got to go big time. Unique guest, that is.
Absolutely right. But yeah, because this is episode 152. But long story short, I will buy Tommy Lloyd's comments until there's a reason to sell them.
Okay. Number 2, Shane. If you were Azuolas Tubelis, there's nothing more to gain in college by coming back to Arizona for another season by yourself.
I'll sell it, and that he could potentially make more money depending on what kind of NIL deal he could get. And that's the reason, I remember we talked to Travis Graff last year when Dale and Terry was weighing whether to come back to Arizona or go to the NBA. And he said, well, I think it was actually after Dalen made his decision. And Travis said, the reason it took him so long to make his decision was because he was thinking about this NIL package where he could have made as much, if not more, than he would have in the NBA if he would have been a second round pick. Ultimately, right. Dalen thought he could be a first rounder. He bet on himself and he won. He didn't play a lot with Chicago, but he got that first round pick. He got that first round money. So I think if Tubelis is looking at the draft and people are saying, look, you're maybe a second round guy and that's it, then maybe Arizona could lure him back. In terms of experience, is another year at Arizona going to make much of a difference for him as far as where he plays after Arizona, whether it's in the NBA or overseas? Probably not, but money talks. Money talks in today's brave new college sports world, and that I think still could be one thing that could lure Tubelis back if they figure out a way to get around the whole international NIL stuff, which sounds like they could.
Here's why I'm going to sell this, Shane. I think he should come back because his defense was not good. When you're getting benched as an elite player late in the game for defensive purposes, that should tell you everything you need to know. And that's my feeling on Tubelis.
I understand it. I just don't know if it's going to make a difference. I think some guys just have that fire and some don't. I don't know if another year is going to make it. In the last couple of weeks, I've just crapped on DeAndre Ayton, who I know I've got that is the other side. He's got his.
I'm not even going to get you started on the Suns tonight.
No, I'm not. No. I'm just saying that Ayton, it's his fifth NBA year now, I think. And sometimes he just lacks the effort. It's not like he needs more experience. Either you do it or you don't. And I think Tubelis, it's not really about technique. It's about, do you want it? Do you have that fire? And I just, you could lump it in and say it's an international thing. I think that's a bit simplistic, but I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference for him if he comes back. I think if he doesn't know how to play defense by now or doesn't want to play defense by now, I don't think next year is going to change anything.
I mean, I understand that point, but he's not an NBA guy. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see Azuolas Tubelis in the NBA. He's going to get crushed by any big man. I mean, look at DeAndre Ayton against Jokic in the playoffs right now. He can't guard him. I mean, simply cannot guard him. He's a liability for the Suns defensively. And he's a better defensive player than Tubelis is. And Tubelis not a center, but as a four, you can't have him guard athletic, big built power forwards. They're going to get smoked.
Yeah. He really doesn't fit in a specific position in the NBA level. He's not a power forward. He's not quite a small forward. So yeah, it's hard to see where he would fit in the NBA. But again, if he thinks he can be a second round pick or early second round or with the chance for the first round, then I think he goes. I don't really see it. And if Arizona can put some sort of NIL package together for him, then maybe he comes back. But I don't know. Maybe Arizona's ready to move on too. Who knows?
I may regurgitate this question throughout the offseason, but we're going to roll with it now. As of now, Shane, football is a sport you're most excited about for the next school year. Buy or sell?
I'll buy it. Yeah, I'm excited about the football. I know speaking of regurgitating things, I've said a bunch of times that I think while Arizona is going to be better next season, I think the rest of the Pac-12 collectively will improve even more than Arizona might, just because you look at the quarterback situation. Arizona's in they got Jaden Delora, but Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, they're back, and some transfers that have been brought in. Michael Penix is back as well. It's going to be a tough situation. With that said, I am very interested. I'm intrigued to see what Arizona does in year 3 with Jed Fish and the pieces they've added. I think there's no reason they shouldn't be better offensively, and they were already very good last year offensively. I know they lost Dorian Singer, but they brought back so many talented guys. Their offensive line should be pretty solid. Defensively, I think the wild card is Dwayne Aquina, and can he light a fire into these guys, but really kind of be the right hand man to Johnny Nansen as he gets up to speed as defensive coordinator, and some of the new guys that they're bringing in, can they get started and make an impact right away? So yeah, I'm excited about it. I would love to see a bowl game for the first time in a few years, whatever bowl game. At minimum, I expect another 5-win season because the schedule is tough. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I think you saw that in the spring game. Again, that win specifically over ASU got a lot of disengaged, disinterested fans interested in Arizona football again.
I would agree with that. I would agree that right now, until we see what the roster looks like for basketball, football is a sport that I'm usually excited for football just because I'm a season ticket holder. I love going to the games. I love torturing myself. But here's what I was thinking about last night. They kind of got me excited. Arizona they got this new 12-team playoff. We talked about it a little bit on the show last week. So Arizona would have been in that 12-team playoff a couple of times in the 90s, most recently 1998. And then they would have been there in 2014.
2014, yeah.
So how long, do you see it in the NIL era, Shane? Like, we're due in the next, 6-7 years, you would think, for Arizona to be on that once every 20 years type thing, right?
Well, let me put my Captain Obvious hat on. It's much more likely they would get in the top 12 than in the top 4. So,
well, thank you. Yes, I would agree with that. Yes.
But could they get there? Sure. It's possible. We've seen it before. Arizona's not going to be a perennial top 10 team and probably not a top 25 team, but they're capable of getting there every so often. They have the history of doing it. Considering what Jetfish has built, sure, it's possible that maybe 2-3 years down the road they have a 9 or 10 win season and they're in play, kind of like that, like Oregon State, their blueprint. They're not. They're the second best football team in that state, just like Arizona typically is the second best college football team in the state of Arizona. But doesn't mean Oregon State can't rise above that every so often, and Arizona is capable of doing the same. I think a lot of it depends on Jed keeping this coaching staff together. Obviously, Jed's staying too, but keeping that coaching staff together. He's already lost a couple of guys, but the key guys are still there. Don Brown left, but Johnny Nansen, Dwayne Aquino bringing him in. Brendan Carroll is the offensive coordinator, and a lot of the position coaches are all still there. So keeping that group together, keeping that continuity, I think is important. But I think it's possible.
I think it's possible at this trajectory. And one last note I want to make. So I found this this thing, the top 10 college football wide receiver unit rankings from On3 Sports on Twitter.
Yep.
Number 1, Ohio State, great. 2, Texas. 3, LSU. 4, Washington. 5, USC with Dorian Singer. 6, Georgia. 7, Tennessee. 8, Texas A&M. Number 10, Alabama. Number 9, Arizona.
Wow.
To even be on this list, Shane. And I don't care, from somebody that follows the sport. Now, I would have to do more of a deep dive, but just to see this list, wow. Exactly what you said. Wow.
And considering that Dorian Singer transferred, imagine where they'd be if he was still there. But even without him, having McMillan and Cowing and some of the other pieces they added both in out of high school and in the transfer portal. I also saw the list for top 10 running back rooms, and Arizona's not on that list. They probably shouldn't be, but I can't imagine they're too far off on there either, just considering the depth they have there. So at the position, at the skill positions, is the so-called skill positions, Arizona's in very good shape. My biggest question to the skill position is just Jaden Delora, because even though I think he's very good, sometimes my biggest concern about him is I think his emotions get the best of him, and can he channel that a little bit better next season?
I would agree with that, and I guess we'll see. If he doesn't, then it's going to be Noah Fafita time. Simple
they have
as
options
that.
now. Yeah,
it's going to be exciting. All right, I got some news in the third segment from what I heard from a source about Big 12 negotiations. So let's talk to Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com first, and maybe I'll break a little scoop here, anonymous scoop here in the third segment here on Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? It's Robbie G, baby, and I am gearing up for a big year with Coach Jetfish and excited to see what the Arizona Wildcats do this football season. And just like the football team, we stepped up our program as well with the official licensed U of A Ice Shaker, baby. Check it out and get it at fanatics.com. Bear down, Arizona. Let's go.
Shane, very glad to be joined by, I believe, our 96th unique guest here on Wildcat Country, Rob Cassidy, who's a basketball recruiting director for Rivals.com. I believe I got that right, Rob, your title. Glad to have you on the show. At first, I have to ask you, we saw that Arizona, they got Carter Bryant last week, which is great, but it kind of alleviated some of the fans' concerns about Tommy Lloyd's recruiting. From your point of view, how do you view Tommy Lloyd as a recruiter at this juncture?
Well, first of all, I'm a little bit hurt that we didn't hold out for number 100 for me.
I just thought about that.
Guess 96, man.
We'll have to. What can I say? We're just four short.
It's like a radio show. You called in just four callers too soon, Rob.
Yeah. That's something I'll have to live with until I pass away. I think it might be too early to tell on Tommy Lloyd's recruitment, like on what he's going to be. I brought this up with you guys off air. It's such a different era now. You've got blue blood coaches like John Shire at Duke coming out and saying, we're going to take fewer high school kids. I think everybody's trying to find their strategy in this new era, because does it do you any good to recruit a class of 6 highly rated freshmen when 4 of them are going to leave because they're not going to get the playing time they want, or something's going to go wrong the next year? Or if you can't get one of the top 30 kids in the country, if you're a school like Arizona or, schools that are used to recruiting the top end high school talent, is it worth it to get the number 40 player in the country? Or should you take the number 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 player out of the transfer portal with some experience that's already proven that they can play at this level? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question yet. And I think it's kind of going to be a trial and error. But I think there's some very strong early data points that point to maybe recruiting the transfer portal is the way to go, and kind of cooling it on those mid-level high school kids.
All right, Rob, like Eric said, thanks a lot for joining us. This is your first appearance on Wildcat Country, hopefully not your last. Hopefully we won't scare you off the next 15 minutes or so. But you were out at the EYBL in Phoenix this past weekend. And for those who know, basically just a big tournament with some of the top high school prospects in the country. You got to see both of Arizona's 2024 commits out there, Jamari Phillips and Carter Bryant. You had a lot of praise for what Phillips did. Can you tell us what you saw from him?
Yeah, he's become a much better shooter, and it wasn't just one game. I watched both of them twice, and he really shot the cover off the ball to the point where, that was always kind of a question about him, where it was like, okay, and kind of the same way with Carter, where we've seen all this potential. He's got the length. He has a lot of things you like, but we got to start seeing the production, and that's starting to come now for him. He had 2 really, really, really big scoring games this week, and kind of put that to bed, as far as, is he a reliable shooter? Because he is. He'll have to develop the rest of the peripheral parts of his game, but he's a guy that I think you'll see move up in the rankings when we refresh. I think in June. I don't want to get that wrong. I think it's the last week of June. It might be the second to last week of June. It's sometime in June. He's a guy that I would watch to slide up a little bit. Bryant was a little bit more hit and miss, but he's always been kind of a guy that we've ranked on potential. He's got the length. He moves fluidly. He's agile. He sees the court well. It's been when is the potential going to turn into production with Carter? And it did for one game. I think he went for 17 and 8 or something in the first game I watched. And he looked like a dominant force. He looked like a top 20 player in the country. But as he's kind of tend to have done the last year or so, he kind of vanished in the next game. But that's youth. Eventually that will equal out. His battle's going to be with consistency, but he has the length and he has the agility and he has the basketball IQ to really impact games as a rebounder as well as a scorer.
And we had your fellow Rivals basketball recruiting guru, Matt Moreno, on last week. And he mentioned that, Carter Bryant, he was there for Carter Bryant's commitment, but he said that, a lot of the angst that we see online from Wildcat fans about Tommy Lloyd and his lack of bringing in guys from the transfer portal, at least to this point, for next season is, a lot of that negativity online. The recruits hear about that, and it maybe even caused Carter Bryant to consider Louisville a little bit more toward the end there. Is that a real thing? Do the fans, fans on social media and message boards, does that really influence where recruits possibly go?
I think maybe some. I mean, you can't paint these kids with a broad brush like that. I think some of them maybe. I think that's maybe a little overblown, especially in this day and age. I think really at the end of the day, it's how much money can you give me now? Like in the era of name, image, and likeness, like we can pretend that it's about family atmosphere and it's about facilities and history. The 2 things that really matter are how many pros have you produced and how much money are you going to give me? And that's really it. And I don't know how long we're going to keep doing this charade where it's like, it's so weird because it's legal now. And you'll ask these kids, hey, how much do the coaches talk about name, image, and likeness money? And they're like, oh, I've never heard of that. It's like, come on, man. It's okay now. It's like they're stuck in like the 5 years ago, I need to lie about this mode because they still feel like it's something illegal, even though it's not. So once we know
all about that as Arizona fans.
Well, yeah, why do you? I think we'll all be better for it. The one thing I would say about the transfer portal thing that you and I talked about offline a little bit is I'd be worried if this were 3 or 4 years ago. But now that everything is so fluid, I brought up the example of Kansas State last year. At this time last year, they had 2 players on their roster. 2. They go out and they get Keontae Johnson from Florida, and he makes a massive impact. They build around him. They go to the Elite 8. They almost win the Big 12. So you can build from scratch. North Carolina didn't exactly have a stacked roster at the beginning of this cycle either. Neither did Kansas. And I expect them to maybe add Hunter Dickinson tomorrow. But you can build like a lot of these. It's not like Arizona is the only high level program that had a depleted roster and really needs to do work in the transfer portal. It's everybody now. And this is just the reality of the sport in 2023.
I want to ask you about somebody that is on Arizona's roster that you may be familiar with from the high school scene a few years ago, Kylan Boswell. Just what were your impressions of him as a high school kid? He obviously moved up his class from 23 to 22 and came in last year and made an impact second half of the year for Arizona. What do you expect from him as his career goes along as a Wildcat?
I think he's going to become a lot better with the ball in his hands. We always thought, we had him ranked a lot higher when we thought he was in the last class, because I thought he would develop as a passer. I thought it would take a year to kind of develop, let him see the court, start making better decisions, because he's a gifted kid when it comes to scoring and it comes to pace. He was throwing the ball in the stands a lot as a senior, a lot. And we figured, okay, usually when you see that out of a guy that was a junior and you think he's in a class below, it's like, okay, another year, we'll give him time to kind of refine those facilitation skills. So, I think maybe this accelerates the timeline. It's obviously better to be playing against college competition than it is in high school. So, I think that he's a guy that I always kind of looked at him as a guy that would take a step forward in year two. And if that year two is going to be in college, I think that you'll see him, pass the ball a lot better anyway.
What's your take on international recruiting? Tommy Lloyd has been one who really prioritizes getting European players, and they seem to be, and I hate to say this, a little bit soft. Is that an accurate stereotype? And if you were a coach, would you be looking like Tommy Lloyd does to go to Europe and get these elite European players?
Well, the way the NBA is going, yeah. I mean, that's, especially the bigs, the NBA wants those kind of finesse bigs that are floor spacers that, can hang around the perimeter and create mismatches out there. And there seems to be a lot of them in Europe. There's also, the other point of that is I particularly don't know anything about European high school prospects unless they come over here for an American event. And I don't think, obviously there are NBA teams and some, I'm sure ESPN, my friend Jonathan Gavoni has an unlimited budget who he can go over there and see these guys. But I think you can find some steals out there that you can get that nobody really knows about, just because there are places out there that just aren't scouted as heavily. Now, obviously everybody knows the NBA guys, Victor Wembanyama, the very top guys in Europe, but some 16-year-old in Europe, you can find a guy out there that could be an NBA talent that people just aren't familiar with. It's still kind of an untapped resource.
So, Rob, we've seen the Tommy Lloyd's recruiting ability now with getting some of the top high school guys, obviously Kylan Boswell, and then the 224 guys, KJ Lewis coming in for 23. I think Arizona fans have mixed feelings about his coaching. Obviously, he's done a tremendous job in the regular season, but you've seen the results or lack thereof in the NCAA tournament. And then there's this talk, well, he's done so much with Sean Miller's guys, and now they're all gone. What are your thoughts about just Tommy Lloyd as a head coach and his ability to consistently keep Arizona at the top of the conference or the Big 12 or wherever they end up?
I don't really believe in, and maybe this is naive on me, and I don't think that obviously my opinion is the end all be all on this. I don't really believe in, this guy is only a regular season coach, because it's not like they forget how to draw up plays when the NCAA tournament starts. You get some bad luck. Maybe you get a bad matchup, but the sample size is so small on Tommy Lloyd right now that I would find it, I don't know, pretty daft to be sounding an alarm, because, he's been in Arizona for 2 years. He's had some bad run in the NCAA tournament. Maybe he got a bad matchup, but it's not like we have this 19-game body of work we could look at. It just seems like a little bit of small sample size panic to me when it comes to that. I think he's going to be fine. I think the Arizona brand is going to help him be fine. Maybe you can get behind the 8 ball at a smaller program. When you fail in year 1 or year 2 and you're at Iowa State, then it can start compounding on you. You can't get kids because nobody wants to go to Iowa State, but everybody still is going to look at Arizona and be like, okay, they've had a rough year. Maybe they didn't advance as far as I wanted them to in the NCAA tournament last year, but it's still Arizona. It's not Iowa State. I hate the crap on Iowa State. That's not what I'm trying to do, but you understand what I'm saying. There's a history of tradition there that you can kind of point to when you bring recruits in, and that some other programs don't have that crunch.
Do you think, just to follow up on that, because from a national perspective, I feel like Arizona is still considered I guess you call it a blue blood, maybe right below that top tier of, Kentucky, Duke, UNC. They haven't been in the Final Four in over 20 years. But do you still feel, since you don't live in Arizona, I know you used to live in Arizona, you don't anymore. Do you still feel like there's that national perception that Arizona really is still a national powerhouse?
Yeah, I do. I feel like, I mean, maybe it's not like it was 10 years ago, but like, look, Indiana's still taking laps around here acting like they're a national powerhouse. If they can do it, Arizona can do it. I don't know. I think that maybe it's not like it was because these kids are young, yes, but a lot of these recruiting visits are educating these kids, right? Like maybe they don't know. And I think it works both ways. They don't know the drawbacks of other programs. It's up to the other coaches to point that out, but at least you have something to sell. I used to cover Frank Martin, and he used to say, in year one, you're always selling a dream. But if you have something to point to, then you no longer have to sell a dream and you have concrete evidence. And Arizona's going to have some of that, at least. And Tommy Lloyd, too, even in his Gonzaga days, he can point to guys that they produced. He's got hard evidence. He's not where Kenny Payne is right now, where he's got nothing to point to. That's a bad situation. So as bad as if they want to pound the panic button in Arizona, it could be worse. It could be down the road at the Yum Center, All
right, Mike, I got one more question for you. It's a two-parter. Rob, again, we really appreciate your time. Any other 2024 possibilities for Arizona that you're seeing? And we asked Matt Moreno this question as well, so we'll ask you, any possibility that their two current commits for 24 would reclassify?
There's the reclassification thing is crazy right now. So yeah, I think that I don't know which one would be more likely. I guess maybe Carter, but everybody seems to be reclassifying right now. Baylor just had one jump into their class today. I think we're going to see North Carolina's point guard Elliot Kadu reclassify from 24 to 23. And it's kind of becoming, and I think every year with the transfer portal happening, you kind of have to pause to see what your roster holes are like. And then you kind of make a decision with the kids you have committed on who's ready, who's got the grades to do it, and then do it. So I wouldn't rule that out at all. As far as other 24s, I think Zoom Diallo is a guy to watch. He's a forward. He's an interesting character too, because he's one that, was unknown at this time last year, probably. And is really, really just kind of blown up, got a ton of offers. He's one that I know Arizona's in contact with. I've talked to him about it. I know there's some mutual interest there. I don't know how serious it is, but he's definitely one to monitor.
My last question to you, Rob, looking at the Pac-12, well, soon to be the Pac-10 without UCLA and USC, do you view Arizona as the team to beat always in the Pac-12 without those other schools? Or do you think that Oregon is going to continue to be a powerhouse? Or is there another team that we need to watch for in future years that could challenge Arizona's reign of supremacy atop the conference?
I don't know how happy Dana Altman is out there in Oregon. I think that they'd be the one to watch. I wonder, and obviously I don't have any connections at the Pac-12. I've always wondered, maybe this is a better question for you guys. I've always wondered what's holding the Big 12 back from adding the two Arizona schools. If I'm the Big 12, I would be doing everything I can to take Arizona and Arizona State right now, immediately.
They want to. They want to. Yeah, Yormark wants that. The thing is that Arizona and Arizona State don't want to jump without Colorado and Utah in tow, and they're all waiting to see what happens with this Pac-12 TV contract.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, like I said, it just on the surface level, I always wondered why they hadn't done that yet. It almost seems like a no-brainer move,
That's what I would think. And can you imagine how good a conference the Big 12 would be in basketball? If, let's say, they added Arizona and then got Gonzaga on top of that.
Yeah, then you've got Kansas and Houston and
Baylor and TCU's slob and
Texas.
I mean, we can go to Texas
Kansas
Texas
State.
Well, Texas
is gone. They go to the SEC.
Oh, that's right. Texas is gone.
But Oklahoma State is no slouch. I mean, BYU coming in. Central Florida is not an awful school. I mean, there's a lot of Cincinnati is coming in.
Yeah, it's something.
From a basketball perspective, the Big 12 could be amazing if somebody's willing to make the jump. Hey, Dr. Robbins and Dave Hickey, you're probably not listening, but if you are, let's go already.
Basketball just doesn't move the needle like football does, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But I mean, the television markets, if you get the Arizona television, I mean, it's not New York, but it's not like, getting that market in that state isn't nothing, I mean, I think it's worth something.
We would certainly hope. I mean, we're all on the same page here. We think the Big 12 makes a lot more sense, but we'll see what happens there. Rob, thank you so much for joining Shane and I. Great analysis, and we'd love to have you back on again soon.
Listen, anytime you invite me into your fancy Scottsdale home, I'm here for you. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Great catching up with Rob Cassidy. Nice debut on Wildcat Country. Good personality and great info. So it's fun to be able to talk with him. Just a couple of quick notes before I give you my scoop that I teased in the first segment, men's tennis hosting regionals against Boise State. And then if they were to win that, they'd play the winner of Florida State, Oklahoma State. It's a big deal. Men's tennis has not really ever been that great at Arizona. So
they're becoming the new softball or the new women's basketball. They've been consistently good. We had Clancy Shields on the show last year, and no, they're rolling along. I know Jed Fish is a big fan of the tennis program, so congrats to them. That's awesome.
I think we can kind of stick the fork in softball and baseball, though, right?
Pending a miracle run in their respective conference tournaments. Yeah, I mean, well, and the softball team did take 2 out of 3 from Oregon State, but it's a little too late. And then baseball, or not? Was it Oregon? Yeah, they both played Oregon State, I think. The baseball team got swept at Oregon State, even though they had 2 leads.
And they lost to GCU last night.
It's like last week we had some hope and they were on the right trajectory. Although our friend Red Hat Cat on Twitter noted that basically Arizona's wins came against like the bottom of the barrel in the Pac-12 outside of ASU. So it wasn't a shock, but they let some late lead slip, and pitching it was the reared its ugly head again. So yeah, barring a miracle run in the conference tournaments, they're both done.
So I got a message, Shane, from somebody that listens to this podcast that has some good sources. I can't really, not necessarily Arizona sources, but we'll say Pac-12 sources. And I got a message this past weekend saying that there is very little chance that any Pac-12 teams will go to the Big 12. In fact, one of the Four Corners presidents referred to a Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, as a used car salesman, no momentum at all for a deal, and confidence remains high that the Pac-12 deal will be more than the Big 12.
Well, that part floors me. Well, now
take that for what it's worth.
Now, does your source have any idea what kind of like TV? Are we talking just streaming or what?
No idea.
No.
I mean, it can't. It has to have a national component. A majority, I think, will be on a streaming source, which is fine. But you're going to have to have.
Is it?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's better than the Pac-12 network, which you can't get.
I don't want to. Maybe this is a bit of a stereotype too, but some older people who want to watch Pac-12 football, a lot of them don't want to cut the cord. They like, I know some people who are like, I don't want to switch to Sling or something else because, over the top platforms, because I like actually having channels. I knowing what channel something's on. Plus, with the over the top streaming, you're always behind a minute or two. Which it could be a big deal if you're, chatting on social media or whatever. So there are just some people who are going to be resistant to that. So while I know a lot of this has gone the streaming way and a lot of people have adjusted, there's a certain percentage of the population that hasn't. And, a lot of people already who are Pac-12 fans refuse to switch networks or switch providers to get Pac-12 network. I don't know they're going to make this move either, but we'll see. Well, I'll reserve judgment. Bottom line for me is I'm sold on the idea that Arizona should make the jump to the Big 12. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to be a bit disappointed.
That's just the news. I mean, take it for what it's worth. Maybe things will change. I mean, I got a positive update the other week, and then I got a negative update. We all have to wait and see what this Pac-12 TV deal looks like. And from there, we can speculate until that. But basically, I think that in the next month, we should find something out. Because if it's not done in the next month, I mean, at some point, these school presidents, and I also think it's going to take, maybe Colorado to say, hey, we're out. I think they may be the key here. If they say, hey, we're out, somebody's got to make the jump first. And I think nobody wants to do it. And I think that's part of the issue,
Used car salesman.
I don't know much of the rhetoric. I like what he's done with his conference. So I'm not one to judge that. But nonetheless, that's the latest update that I heard. And, take that for what it's worth. Great show today. Good catching up with Rob Cassidy, making his debut appearance on the show. We'll be back next week, Shane. A lot of, let's hope there's more recruits that we can talk about. It's fun when we have good news to talk about. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.